Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Suranandana Vajajana Dandana Jashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Ramuna Jira Vanachari Jira Vanachari Sayolada Madhava Kunda Vihari Jayolada Madhava Kunda Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vajajana Dandana Yashodanandana Vajajana Dandana Ramuna Jira Vanachari Ramuna Jira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Prabhupada ki Jai Gopimananda Hari Haribo. So, it's text 23, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam Namaha
Deving Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayamudiriye
Tato Jayamudiriye.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya and spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Uttare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Vidi Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vijayane Nivisi Shasunyavadi Paskatani Stani Om Gyanta Vedandasa Gyanandana Sokaya Chakshur Niramanjana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, first word is Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara. And so we should do those first two lines. Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara Chetaso Vachasas Chapi Chetaso Vachasas Chapi Bhutanam Iti Nischaya Bhutanam Iti Nischaya Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara Chetaso Vachasas Chapi Bhutanam Iti Nischaya Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara Chetaso Vachasas Chapi Bhutanam Iti Nischaya Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara Chetaso Vachasas Chapi Bhutanam Iti Nischaya. Someone else?
Cameron, can you please move it? I can't see one word. No. Not like that. You turn it so that you can see it. Can you see it now? Yeah, that's good. But move it towards that one. No. Can you see it? I was going further. Colleen, can you see it? You want it further
Yes,
to the front?
yeah, I can see it, just not the last word. Oops, no.
You can come forward, but yeah, just like that, come front, all the way.
It's just the glare
Okay,
of those lights.
Can you see it? Can you see it?
Okay.
Only for those who have eyes to see.
Ronnie, can you see it?
It's okay, I can see from here. So that I will just move a little.
Okay, so Astika, can you say it? Can you chant it?
Yeah, please, Prabhu. Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gatiragochara Chetaso Vachasaschapi Bhutanam Iti Nischaya
Athava Deva Mayaya Nunam Gita Gochara
Nunam Gatira Gochara
Cetaso Vachasastrapi
Chittaso Vachasastrapi
Bhutanamita Nishchaya
Bhutanamiti Nischaya. And any of the ladies?
Atavadeva Mayaya.
Atavadeva Mayaya
Nunam Gatir Agochara.
Nunam Gatira Gochara
Jetaso Vachasastrapi.
Vijaso Vachasastrapi
Bhutanamiti Nischaya. I'm sorry, there's no two. Nischaya.
Bhutanamiti Nischaya. Very good.
Atavadeva Mayaya.
Atavadeva Mayaya
Nunam Gatira Gochara.
Nunam Gatira Gochara
Cetaso
Cetaso Vachasastrapi
Bhutanamiti Nischaya.
Bhutanamiti Nischaya.
Oh, Karen, you can do it.
Okay. Etavadeva Namaya.
Etavadeva Mayaya
Nunam Gatir Gochaya.
Nunam Gatira Gochara
Sestaso Vashtaskachape.
Cetaso Vachasastrapi
Bhutanamita Nischaya.
Bhutanamiti Nischaya. Kids most improved. Actually, she started off okay. She didn't even have to improve. She was already there. So anyway, word for word is Attava.
Atava
Alternatively,
Alternatively
Deva,
Deva
the Lord,
the Lord
Mayaya,
Mayaya
energies,
energies
Nunam,
Nunam
very little, Gati, movement, Ugochara,
Agochara
inconceivable,
Inconceivable.
Chetasa,
Cetasa
either by the mind,
either by the mind
Vachasa,
Vachasa.
by words,
by words
Cha,
Cha
or Api,
Api
also,
also
Bhutanam,
Bhutanam
of all living beings,
of all living beings
Iti,
Iti
thus,
thus
Nischaya,
Nischaya
concluded.
concluded.
So I'll say and then you can repeat. Thus it is concluded,
Thus it is concluded
that the Lord's energies
that the Lord's energies
are inconceivable.
Are
inconceivable.
No one can estimate them
No one can estimate them
by mental speculation
by mental speculation
or by word jugglery.
or by word jugglery.
I'll read it again. Thus it is concluded that that's okay. Yeah. That was the end of that thing. Thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
A question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying an actor, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Knowing the ultimate doer, one should not pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer. To answer this doubt, the reply is, it's hard to say, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible for everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti, or material energy. Oh, and then there was light. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord And still, he was put into doubts by the deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the supreme cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. The whole atmosphere of the age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy of the proportion of measurement. And the proportion of measurement is inexplicable. So the verse then again is, thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. So, Pariksit Maharaj, another name for Pariksit Maharaj is Vishnu Rata, one who is protected by Lord Vishnu. He was protected by Krishna right from birth, when he was in the womb, before his birth, in the womb, from the Brahmastra Ashvatthama. And he had all the association of all these really great souls, like his uncles. So he was a perfectly saintly and realized, qualified king, Rajarsi. How one realizes the Supreme Absolute Truth is by humble service, submissive, humble service to the Supreme Lord and His representatives. By hearing from the Supreme Lord or His representatives. And then the Lord reveals the truth from within. It's not like you can just read the scriptures and become realized. It's a process, and that process is explained very nicely by Srila Prabhupada in all the scriptures and all of the other previous acharyas. It's a process of, surrendering to a qualified spiritual master, rendering humble service, hearing from them and asking questions and acting on their instructions slowly. If one is pure in their service and humble in their service, the Lord, when the heart becomes cleansed, will reveal the truth to you. There are stages of realization. This is a process that's progressive. It's not like all of a sudden, now I've been chanting for 6 months and now I've got it, I understand it. Yeah, there's a certain level of understanding. And then you may be chanting for 6 years and now you have another level of understanding. It's a process of gradually uncovering the truth and in proportion to our surrender. So, but Pariksit Maharaj, he was already there. He was a completely qualified Rajarsi, qualified to rule the whole entire planet. So, and he had got that from this association. Vishnu Rata was his name. And so, as soon as he understood that Dharma the bull was Dharma by the way he had spoken, that he understood from these different answers that Dharma gave, that he understood that that the bull gave, that he understood that the bull was the personification of religion. And the only doubts were in the bull's mind was due to the age of Kali. The combination of the age of Kali and Krishna's energy, Maya Shakti, that combination created doubts, and that's the doubts that Kali, along with the Maya Shakti energy, is trying to create within this age. And we see this more and more in our present day civilization, so-called civilization. The more we're doubting everything, everyone, every kind of authority there is. And this goes back to, this Prabhupada was very strong about, well, let me just go back a step. So, Dharma is saying, I don't know, I'm confused. And this is the actual position of a Vaishnava, that the Vaishnava doesn't blame the situation or doesn't take credit for a success. Any reversal of fortune, he understands that this is a minimal karmic reaction for my past misdeeds. Any blessing that he feels very grateful for, it doesn't really feel deserved. And it's not that there's anything other than this process that qualifies one for becoming a pure devotee. It's not by birth. It's that, because I was born into a very wealthy family, therefore I have an edge over everyone else. Or because of my past karma, I took birth with a mind that is very good at memorizing verses. Those things help. Having a great deal of Lakshmi can help. Having the mind that can memorize verses is very helpful. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you develop a pure devotional attitude, or you have some other talents that come at birth. The real qualification is developing a humble service attitude. And Pariksit Maharaj had that humble service attitude, and he understood that Dharma, that the Buddha was Dharma. And again, the Vaishnava never blames the other person. Now, we've been having this discussion because it seems contradictory to what we have to do in order to be a good parent or to manage a temple, that you have to find out you can't just say, oh, the temple's dirty because it's just meant to be that way. It's Krishna's energy. You can't say that Prabhupada had a rule about cleaning the bell in Vrindavan every hour on the hour, and he would get very upset if it wasn't done exactly on the hour. And one would ask, well, why was he? Vrindavan is a timeless land. Why was he so concerned about such strict, following of these rules? He wasn't showing us spontaneous devotion. He was showing us Vaidhi Bhakti, and he wanted things done in a very orderly fashion. So there is an apparent contradiction, but if you understand the underlying principle that Kali is trying to create doubts within us, and Maya is assisting, and a devotee understands these points and accepts whatever reversals come as his own, doesn't blame anyone else. He maintains a humble mentality. But if I see a devotee chanting their rounds with the left hand, it would be remiss of me not to say, Prabhu, actually you're supposed to chant with the right hand. I didn't know if anybody told you that. With a humble, approach. Or this is the famous example where a devotee this devotee put salt in the Charitamrita. And Prabhupada said, who has done this? And the devotee said, it was me. And he said, why? Well, I guess it was Krishna's mercy. And Prabhupada said, no, it was your stupidity. So you would say, you question then, well, how is it that Prabhupada then is pointing blame? Because he is the guru, and his business is to train his disciples. Also, you can say, and you hear Srila Prabhupada's morning walks in Juhu Beach, and he's speaking very strongly against Mayavadi philosophy. He's calling them rascals, fools, nonsense. And there's that one Indian man that's always arguing back. How he spoke so strongly about scientists. He was always speaking very strongly about Darwin's philosophy of evolution. And in our line, in the Vaishnava line, Madhvacharya, who we should hear about tomorrow, spoke very strongly. Ramanuja Acharya spoke very strongly against those principles that were not in line with the Vaishnava principles. Lord Chaitanya with Prakashananda Saraswati. Although he did it, in a different way, he rejected his preaching. And although he did, there was an incident with Lord Chaitanya, with Jagai and Madhai, where he wanted to retaliate with the Sudarshan Chakra. And Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda Prabhu went to it and said, please, no, this isn't, not in this incarnation. They are taking shelter of you. They are begging for forgiveness. We didn't come in this age to kill. Whereas Parikshit Maharaj is prepared to kill. Because it was still between Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, and it was his right as the saintly king. He didn't need to have a trial. Kali didn't need to get a lawyer and bring in some experts, saying, well, he had a trauma in childhood, and he saw his parents gored by a bull, and he was acting out against the bull from his trauma. No, there wasn't going to be any debate here. He's beating an offenseless animal, and he's going to be executed right there on the spot. But we know later he takes shelter, and that's the king do his duty. If someone begs for forgiveness, he accepts that. Which is also in this line. It's different from Dwapara Yuga to this age, because we're part of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and the Yuga Dharma is, we're a mercy mission. So we are spreading mercy, and our weapon is the Hare Krishna mantra. We're not going around with swords. Our weapon is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, the distribution of prasadam. That is what we're supposed to do. But Prabhupada spoke very strongly about Darwinism. I mean, and there's some discussion now in the schools that because of this Darwin philosophy, that it's a perverted reflection of the actual transmigration of the soul. But they say that we're progressing further. Like I remember in my generation, when I was in my first year of college, a song came out by this one rock group, and it was called The Crown of Creation. We are the crown of creation. That we've evolved to the highest point of creation. We're the most evolved, the most learned. And everyone before us, all those generations, they're not as evolved as we are. So it's a rejection of authority. And now, this generation, younger generation, the grandparents don't understand a gigabyte or, whatever. I don't even know what terms to use. Anything about internet. So they feel superior, which is, upside down. That is Kali's mission, that you reject the authorities and you become the most advanced. You become your own authority. Therefore, there's so much quarreling all over the world. The whole world is nothing but quarrels. I mean, and there's so many different groups. Like in Ireland, there was the Catholics and the Protestants, and India, the Muslims and the Pakistanis. Recently, there was the Buddhist and this other tribe in Burma, Myanmar. I don't remember the name of the other group. The Rohingyas. They're called Rohingyas.
Muslims, I think.
They were kind of Muslims. And the tribe was Rohingyas. And so the Muslims and the Buddhists over there. So many different things. So many reasons for quarreling. And that's Kali's mission, to create confusion and chaos and anarchy. There actually are political parties that are anarchists. One of the presidents of the United States was assassinated by an anarchist. I think it was Garfield or McKinley. So this rejection of structure and authority, and whereas our process is to establish the authority of the Vedas. And Parikshit Maharaj, here's another point about Parikshit. he himself, when he was cursed, he did not have to accept that curse. He was, again, a Vishnurata. He was cursed just like Arjuna was put into confusion on the battlefield of Kuru, etc., so that Krishna could speak the Bhagavad Gita. And so Parikshit's being cursed was so that the Srimad Bhagavatam would be spoken by the pure devotee Sukadeva Goswami to this great saintly personality who was qualified to hear it, Maharaj Parikshit. And he was willing to just give up everything, his royal garb, his treasury, his kingdom, his family, and just go sit on the banks of the Ganges and hear from Sukadeva Goswami and wait for the curse to take its place. Apparently, actually, there was an attempt. There was, it's in the 12th canto, Kashyapa Muni had the ability to counteract the poison of this very powerful snake bird, Takshaka. And, excuse me, Kashyapa was on his way to the place where Maharaj Parikshit was in meditation and preparing. And he runs into the snake bird, and the snake bird shows him his potency by putting some of his poison on a tree, and the tree immediately dies. But then Kashyapa Muni, he either chants a mantra or he puts some nectar on the tree and immediately comes back to life. So the snake bird realizes that this isn't going to work. I can't intimidate him. So he then starts bringing him valuable jewels and gems and large quantities of gold. In a sense, a type of bribe. But Kashyapa Muni sees all this and he thinks, well, maybe I should just count it. So then he's delayed and he arrives late. So then this Takshaka, he comes, he changes form, and he appears to be a Brahmin. That I saw a painting, a very beautiful painting, where you see Parikshit sitting on a throne, and you see this snake bird coming at him. But according to the 12th canto, that's not what actually happened. He was actually sitting on the bank of the Ganges, I believe, and not in royal dress. And a Brahmin walks up to him and bites him. And that Brahmin was the snake bird. And that snake was the snake of material existence. And he, by hearing the pastimes and glories of the Lord in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he was free from all of the entanglement of this material world. He had, and this was actually a blessing. It wasn't a curse. It was a blessing. So it was all arranged by the Lord. So as it says in the last sentence, that the energies of the Lord they're inexplicable. There's so many different varieties and so much that the Lord can do that we can't just put it into a box and say, this is Krishna consciousness, or this is what happened. There's so many factors. And there's so much more to what we are being given now that is available for us once we get over the initial hurdle of being attached to various, whatever our particular attachments are, material desires. So we should take advantage of the Srimad Bhagavatam and hear it regularly in the association of devotees, read it with a submissive mind and heart, and learn how to talk to Paramatma, learn how to pray, and take shelter, and Krishna will reveal everything from within. So, anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You brought up this one point. I just want to say something about it. It was like the kind of new guy, and going down to Sankirtan doing books, and I came back. I did pretty good. So I'm going, hey, I did pretty good. And the guy says, "You're not the doer." So the next time I come back and I go, I do pretty bad, and I go, Krishna's arrangement. He says, no, it's you fouled up. You can't win.
No.
I got one more story I got to throw in there about Sankirtan, since we're on it. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but do you know Ranga Puri? Anyway, he was a Miami guy. We were going out doing traveling Sankirtan, and we're working a carnival, which we had a permit for. Going back to Godheads, candy canes, or whatever. And then we got thrown out. So Puri decides we're going to come back at night. So I said, boy, we're going to get thrown in jail here. Come on. He says, just do what I said. Be team leaders. All right, let's do it. Within a half an hour, we're being led off in handcuffs with our hats off. We get thrown in jail. And I go to Puri. I said, Puri, I told you we're going to get thrown in jail. He goes, what are you complaining about? I got you a place to stay tonight, didn't I?
Always look on the bright side of life. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's nice.
I got a million of them, but I'm only going to do that.
Well, as far as the first thing you said, I mean, you didn't. I forget what you said. On the second, the person said, "No, you didn't try." No, I mean, no, you. It's not the result. It's the attempt that Krishna sees. You know. So I would.
Well, they were a little hardcore back in the day.
I know. Yeah, there was a quota. You know, like I told this story. We were talking about how these books are so auspicious that even they just read one, chapter or one line or one word, they're going back to God. Even if they just touch the book, they're going to be benefited. So this one devotee, Ahamsivati, and he was such a devoted book distributor. He would go out with Nirguna, the two of them. I would call them the two four Kumaras, because they were very small and they looked childlike or very innocent. And they didn't mind. Devotees, there was a thing about who did big books, who did small books. They just distributed small books, they didn't mind. And so one day he comes back, and after I had given this class about these books are so auspicious, even if you touch them, you get benefit. You'll go back to Godhead. So he comes back and he's, wow, it's so blissful, it's so great. I said, well, how'd you do? What? He said, well, I said, how many books did you distribute? He said, I didn't distribute any. Well, did you get any donations? I said, no donation. So what happened? He said, I got 143 people to touch the back to Godhead. So, yeah, he took me literally. But I got to figure out how to, train them a little differently. So Krishna gave me the intelligence to say, well, can you imagine, not only would they touch them, but if they actually gave a donation and they could take it home with them, and then they can touch it daily, regularly, and they could even maybe read it, wouldn't that be even better than just touching it once? And he goes, yeah. So that solved that problem. But anyway, there was a definite push for getting Prabhupada's books out, and it was important. It is important to distribute books. And I was reading in the 12th canto the importance of the Bhadra Purnima, that just passed. And it says in the 12th canto that if you distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne on the Bhadra Purnima, you're guaranteed
to see Krishna face to face.
Yeah. So that's Yes? Were you raising your hand?
No, I don't ask questions anymore.
Okay.
I have an announcement. I know some of us here know. This is the Palms lawyer, Earl Denham. He is in a coma stage at Memorial Hospital.
Oh.
Say a prayer if somebody wants to visit.
Who?
Earl Denham. He used to do a lot of
He's done a lot of legal work here for us. Oh. He's done a lot of service. So, how many of you all saw Jayapataka Maharaj? Did you see him speak?
Yes.
Yeah, he did. He all did.
He said he came out of the cage of death, and he was tempted even at times to just kind of give up and go home. But he didn't. So, all of his disciples particularly should take that. I was meditating on what he said. Take that as him expressing to us how important it is to hear now what he has to say, because he stayed for us. So, but he's doing good. He, the first day of the day that he gave his first class, he had a blood transfusion. But the doctors, also examined him, and they said he was doing good. They're thinking now that actually that it's because of his hemoglobin, some count in the hemoglobin, that he's been having to have blood transfusions. But they think that the medication is also in the mix for that, and that it sounded like soon that won't be necessary. So he was just thanking everybody for their prayers, and then, the devotees there that are caring for him, and the devotees that gave blood. Different devotees actually gave their blood to him. And that was Saturday, and he gave a class Sunday, and he gave a class yesterday also. So whenever he's feeling up to it, he's going to speak. It's usually about 9:30 our time.
So I remember also he said that his desire for staying was to see the project, the Mayapur project finished. Then he said something about a biography of Prabhupada. I don't remember the third thing. The fourth thing was to create a succession within his... Oh, Navadri Parakam was the third one. And then he wanted to make sure that there was a succession in his zone set up. But he also said that the next 3 or 4 months are still crucial because the body could reject the organs. But my realization of it was, speaking from my own point of view, was at first I was, it was like seeing Jesus Christ on the cross, and I wanted to take him down. And then, or like the controversy of seeing Prabhupada in the final days. But then I heard him speak, and I no longer saw the body, but I heard through his sound vibration, I heard a transcendental, liberated person speaking, who happened to be in that body. And I started thinking about Grandfather Bhishma lying on the bed of arrows. Because he isn't that body. Well, that was what I went through when I first saw him and heard him. He's definitely all there. And it's just a question of whether or not Krishna, whatever Krishna wants, he has a desire, and then we'll see how it goes. I hope and pray that. And so, by the way, so I wasn't supposed to give today's class. This was actually Madhava Priya's class. I got a phone call late last night, and I tried to pretend that she had a wrong number when she was and so I'm not prepared for this class. So excuse me for whatever inadequacies. But what I was planning on doing anyway, though, since now Maharaj is speaking and he's well again, to give classes, and I was studying for tomorrow's class, and tomorrow's classes would be text 24. Well, there is a class that Jayapataka Maharaj gave on text 24, and it goes for about 45 minutes. For some reason, it ends abruptly, but it's a very nice class. He gives some very nice pastimes of Kolavecha, you know, he gives some very nice pastime stories about him. And I thought, well, I wouldn't always do this, but since it's a coincidence that it's my day to give class, and he gave a class on this verse, I'd like to give my day to my older godbrother. So we're going to have, yes?
So can we also do that sometime? Can I also do that?
It depends. I mean, I think this is a special circumstance, but I wouldn't want to, I mean, it depends what you want to give your guru a chance to preach or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if it turns out that you, I don't want to make it, but I just felt like this was just an appropriate time because he's been in, really dire straits, and I'm waiting for this transfusion, and then in the beginning he explains, I didn't quite fully understand how the government first had to approve, they had to turn the organs over to the government, and then they had to authorize this. It was a whole rigmarole he had to go through, and then yet he still was able to get them, and the body has accepted them, and so everything seems to be proceeding according to the plan, and it's miraculous. A person in his condition, I mean, any time to have a type of transplant of that magnitude for anyone, a healthy person his age, and he's the same age as I am, we're a few months apart. So he'll be 70 in April. I'll be 70 in February. And so but that age factor is a big factor. But his condition that he was in, to go through that double transplant and survive, is miraculous.
It's true. He even said also that initially, Dr. Vela, who was the surgeon, gave him a 80% chance of survival.
I thought he said 20.
60.
20, 80.
No, it was 20 survival, 80 survival, 20 not. And then he changed it to 60, 40. And then Guru Maharaj didn't know, but Dr. Vela revealed to one of Guru Maharaj's servants that it was down to 50-50. And so,
Yeah, I mean, and I even feel that, considering what I just said, that if it was a normal in the sense, he's not normal, he's just but a person, like say, a person with not any health issues up to that point, and then they are going to experience at approximately the age of 70 years old, a liver and kidney transplant. That would be very, 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 very difficult. The chances are not real good. Because, I've had friends who've had kidney transplants, and when they were in their 30s or 40s, and they didn't do that well. It's not always a given that the body accepts. And there's especially I remember with one devotee, after a kidney, he had 2 kidneys. No, they just gave him one because he just needed one kidney. And the other kidney was useless. But his body, he got real puffy and it was, and he struggled for a long time, but he lived another 20 so years. But he was struggling still, sometimes needing dialysis. So I'm just saying that this is extraordinary what's happening with him. It really is like Grandfather Bhishma. But my first reaction was when I saw him, I didn't want to see him like that.
I thought also it struck me that how good his color was. And certainly the liver has something to do with that. You know, because the liver it's bilirubin, it filters with, does it take the bilirubin out or it creates bilirubin? Anyway, somehow, you know, the liver is real. Like when one of my kids was a baby, they got some kind of jaundice, infantile jaundice. And then the skin gets, it's discolored, it gets yellowish. But I thought his color was really good, and he was like sitting up. Like before the surgery wasn't Kaivalya, often he'd be just like he had no strength, he'd be slumped down in the chair. And they would even have to like
lift his head.
Push him up. But you could see he was alert. He's, you know, it's still difficult to understand, and that may never go, you know, that may never go away. But I was just happy to like see that he was as good as he was. And then, you know, I appreciate your realization, Prabhu, about like not seeing the body. You know, he's just a great soul. It doesn't matter like kind of body.
And the way to see him is by sound vibration. Don't look at his body. Hear what he has to say. Then you really see him. Yes, Kaivalya?
Yeah, a lot of the same feelings we had, you know, when it first happened, and he finally, after being in a coma for so long, he was there, you know, and then I was there when he gave his first, I was in Mayapur when he gave his first, like, welcome back
After the stroke you're talking
speech.
about.
Yeah, after the stroke, and that was when we all saw him, you know, like, wow. And he was saying, like, some intimate things, you know, but he was basically, from his determination, from the prayers from all the devotees, his desire to keep serving, because Prabhupada gave him like a long list of requests, instructions that he wanted to have fulfilled by Jayapataka Swami. And so he took that very seriously, and some of the ones you mentioned, that he mentioned, about that he wants to live to see that
fulfilled.
You know, fulfilled, that when it opens, he wants to be there for, because they come to him regularly for advice on some of these different things, because he's still on many of the management things. He's still, you know, in Mayapur, he's like the top of, you know, what goes. And yeah, it's not even about the body anymore. It's like he's directing, and it's all happening. But he is putting a lot of emphasis on us following his instructions, you know, that we vowed to take, because whoever, you know, the people that don't, he says it has an effect on his health. So, I mean, you know, there's all that to consider.
And this is actually the fourth time that he's come so close to death, because the first time was when he was attacked by a madman in Madrid at the airport, and this person slit his throat.
And that's
actually why he has hepatitis C.
Yeah, that's why he had this.
Dirty blood, and when they gave the transfusion. And then the next time was the stroke. And then in 2015, he had to be airlifted from Mayapur to Delhi because he had such severe pneumonia. He was losing consciousness, and they couldn't help him in Calcutta. And then this was the fourth time. So
that first one, I remember very clearly, because it was a new thing called the fax machine, and I started faxing him letters.
After the
and you know, so he was describing to me the whole thing, and he was, I mean, it's a miracle, because nobody was there to help him. The guy missed anyway.
there was a real anti-cult feeling in Spain at that time, and he literally, you know, had to like wrap his shutter around his neck to keep from bleeding to death, and get up, and finally they called an ambulance. So Kaivalya and I have a 9-page report, personal report that he wrote, that it's just like incredible what happened to him.
So Dr. John has a point.
Yeah,